Buried deep in the Arctic ice lie creatures untouched by time, mammoths with flesh still intact, rhinos frozen mid-stride, and relics from ancient humans who once walked among giants. Today, we uncover the astonishing remains of Ice Age megafauna and the clues they hold about a world lost to history. From preserved blood in a woolly mammoth to the DNA of Neanderthals still found in us today, every frozen discovery reshapes what we know about extinction, survival, and human origins. Our story begins in the heart of Siberia, at a remote site known as Batagaika Crater. It was here, in the early 1970s, that a geologist made a startling discovery while surveying the region for gold deposits. As he explored a massive gash in the permafrost, carved by seasonal thawing and erosion, he noticed something peculiar protruding from the frozen mud. Upon closer inspection, he realized it was a remarkably well-preserved tusk, not from a modern elephant, but an extinct woolly mammoth. The specimen was unlike anything he had ever seen, with much of its original flesh, skin, and hair still intact after more than 12,000 years entombed in the ice. Word of the find soon reached the scientific community, electrifying researchers around the globe. Over the following decades, dozens of expeditions would converge on Batagaika and other permafrost sites across Siberia, Alaska, and Canada. As the Arctic thaw accelerated with climate change, more and more of these frozen time capsules were coming to light. To date, the remains of no less than 61 individual mammoths have been unearthed at Batagaika alone. But they are just the tip of the proverbial iceberg. Scattered throughout the northern latitudes lie the mummified carcasses of countless Ice Age creatures, from steppe bison and cave lions to ancient horses and caribou. Perhaps most intriguing of all are the traces of early humans emerging alongside them. In 2010, a team of Russian scientists revealed the discovery of a 30,000-year-old figurine carved from woolly mammoth ivory, the oldest known depiction of the species by human hands. What secrets might these exquisitely preserved relics hold about our prehistoric ancestors and the bygone world they inhabited? Join us as we journey back in time to the windswept mammoth steppe at the peak of the last ice age, and even deeper into the past, to the very dawn of human origins. Long before the first modern humans set foot in Eurasia, archaic hominins had already dispersed across the continent. From around 300,000 to 30,000 years ago, Neanderthals ranged from the Iberian Peninsula to the Altai Mountains in southern Siberia. Powerfully built, with barrel chests and heavy brows, these hominins were well adapted to the harsh glacial climate. Contrary to their brutish reputation, Neanderthals were skilled hunters and innovative toolmakers. Recent studies suggest they mastered the use of fire, crafted decorative objects, and may have even possessed the capacity for speech. But the Neanderthals were not alone in their Ice Age realm. In the foothills of the Altai, another enigmatic lineage thrived in the frozen wilderness, the Denisovans. First identified from a fingerbone fragment in Denisova Cave in 2010, these hominins split from Neanderthals some 400,000 years ago, but little is known about their appearance or way of life. While Neanderthals and Denisovans would vanish by the end of the last ice age, their legacy lives on in the genomes of people alive today. As much as 2% of the DNA of modern Europeans and Asians can be traced to Neanderthal ancestors, while Denisovan inheritance runs as high as 6% in Melanesian populations. What fateful encounters transpired between these archaic hominins and the ancestors of modern humans as they spread across the mammoth steppe? The answers may lie in ancient bones preserved for tens of millennia in caves and permafrost. As revolutionary techniques in paleogenetics and proteomics open new windows into the past, researchers are beginning to paint an intimate portrait of these long-vanished relatives. From fragments of DNA, we now know that Neanderthals likely had pale skin and red hair, as well as a penchant for painkillers, thanks to traces of poplar bark, a natural source of salicylic acid, recovered from their dental plaque. But the Neanderthal story took a fateful turn around 45,000 years ago, with the arrival of a new species of hominin in Eurasia, Homo sapiens. Originating in Africa some 300,000 years prior, these anatomically modern humans began expanding into the Levant and beyond, where they encountered and interbred with the endemic Neanderthal and Denisovan populations. By 40,000 years ago, a perfect storm of climate change, competition, and absorption into the expanding human population drove the Neanderthals to extinction. The Denisovans would follow suit 10,000 years later, leaving Homo sapiens as the last hominin standing. In the next chapter, we'll meet the magnificent megafauna that shared this lost world with our prehistoric kin: towering mammoths, shaggy rhinos, and saber-toothed cats. Entombed in ice, their remarkably preserved remains offer an unparalleled glimpse into a vanished ecosystem on the brink of collapse. As we step back in time, our first destination is the windswept plains of Siberia, around 40,000 years ago. Here, amid a vast frozen landscape, a remarkable creature roams, the woolly mammoth. Standing up to 11 feet tall at the shoulder and weighing as much as 6 tons, these majestic relatives of modern elephants were superbly adapted to life in the bitter cold. Swathed in shaggy coats of thick brown fur up to 3 feet long and insulated by a 4-inch layer of fat, woolly mammoths could endure temperatures plummeting to -50 degrees Fahrenheit. Their small ears minimized heat loss, while long curved tusks, some spanning 16 feet, were used for foraging, defense, and attracting mates. For thousands of years, these mighty herbivores thrived across much of Europe, Asia, and North America. But by around 4,000 years ago, the last surviving woolly mammoths had vanished from their final stronghold on Wrangel Island in the Arctic Ocean. What caused their demise? Climate change likely played a key role, as rising temperatures at the end of the last ice age led to habitat loss and shifts in vegetation. But many experts believe human hunting also helped push the woolly mammoth to the brink. In fact, our species and these ice age giants have a long, intertwined history. For millennia, prehistoric humans not only hunted mammoths for their meat and hides, but used their bones and tusks to construct shelters and create intricate artworks. Astonishingly, the oldest known musical instruments are flutes carved from mammoth ivory, some dating back more than 40,000 years. And at a site in central Poland, archaeologists uncovered the remains of a mammoth bone hut built by Neanderthals nearly 100,000 years ago. These tantalizing clues offer a glimpse into the complex relationship between early humans and the elephantine titans with whom they shared an increasingly fragile ecosystem. But the woolly mammoth is just one of many iconic creatures we'll encounter on our journey through the lost worlds of the Pleistocene. As we venture further back in time and across the globe, we'll come face to face with a menagerie of vanished beasts, each with its own captivating story. From the huge horse-hunting cave hyenas of Europe to the marsupial lions and car-sized wombats of Australia, the fossil record reveals an astounding diversity of Ice Age megafauna. We'll also trace the twisting paths of human evolution, as our early ancestors spread out from Africa and interacted with other archaic human species. The recent discovery that Homo sapiens interbred with both Neanderthals and Denisovans has rewritten our understanding of these long-lost relatives. But perhaps most intriguing of all are the enduring mysteries that continue to perplex scientists. What caused the relatively sudden extinction of so many large animals around 11,000 years ago? How did the last of the woolly mammoths hang on until almost the dawn of recorded history? And what might the future hold for today's megafauna in a rapidly changing world? Join us as we seek answers to these questions and more, bringing the latest scientific evidence to bear on the enigmas of our prehistoric past. Coming up next, we'll plunge into the heart of Pleistocene Europe, where a chance discovery in a German cave would redefine our understanding of humanity's deep origins and our place in nature. Stay tuned. The story of life on Earth is one of constant change, marked by the rise and fall of countless species over billions of years. But perhaps no period in recent history has witnessed more dramatic shifts than the Pleistocene epoch, which began some 2.6 million years ago and ended just 11,700 years before present. This was the time of the Ice Ages, when great glaciers advanced and retreated across the continents in a slow dance driven by variations in the Earth's orbit and wobble. With each pulse of the climate, ecosystems were reshuffled and organisms were forced to adapt, migrate, or face extinction. From the fossil record, we know that the Pleistocene was home to a menagerie of remarkable megafauna, from mammoths and mastodons to giant ground sloths and car-sized armadillos. But it was also a critical stage in the evolution of a peculiar primate known as Homo sapiens. To set the scene for our journey, let's rewind the clock some 300,000 years to the savannas of East Africa. Here, paleoanthropologists have unearthed the earliest known remains of anatomically modern humans. These archaic Homo sapiens were the descendants of even earlier hominins like Homo erectus, who had already spread into Asia and Europe. But they shared their world with other human species, like the Neanderthals, who thrived in Ice Age Europe for hundreds of thousands of years, and the mysterious Denisovans, who left little behind but a few bones and teeth in a Siberian cave. As the climate shifted and the African homeland became drier, waves of modern humans began to venture out of the motherland in search of new opportunities. By at least 70,000 years ago, archaeological evidence shows they had reached the coast of South Asia, and within another 20,000 years or so, they had arrived in Australia, their first conquest of an uninhabited continent. Meanwhile, back in Europe and Asia, the Neanderthals and Denisovans were facing mounting challenges as the climate turned colder and more volatile. These conditions favored the rise of mammalian megafauna, like the woolly mammoth, which was exquisitely adapted to life on the frozen steppe. Standing up to 11 feet tall at the shoulder and weighing up to 6 tons, the woolly mammoth was a truly imposing creature. But it was no match for the spear-wielding modern humans who began to invade its domain some 40,000 years ago. Armed with superior technology and hunting skills, Homo sapiens quickly established itself as the top predator in Ice Age Eurasia. They drove the Neanderthals to extinction and assimilated the Denisovans through interbreeding, as evidenced by the fragments of archaic DNA that survive in modern populations. But even as humans triumphed over their hominin cousins, they also had to contend with the megafauna that roamed the mammoth steppe. One of the most fearsome was the cave lion, a powerful predator that was up to 25% larger than its modern African counterpart. With a muscular build, large canines, and a flowing mane, the cave lion was well suited to taking down Ice Age giants like bison, horses, and young mammoths, and it would have posed a serious threat to early human hunters, who memorialized their encounters with the beast in cave paintings and ivory carvings. As the Pleistocene drew to a close, the world began to warm and the ice sheets receded. This triggered a massive extinction event that wiped out most of the megafauna, including mammoths, mastodons, cave bears, and saber-toothed cats. The exact causes are still debated, but it's clear that humans played a role through overhunting and habitat destruction. By the dawn of the Holocene, some 11,700 years ago, we were the last hominin standing, and the age of the megabeasts had come to an end. But thanks to the wonders of science, we can still catch glimpses of this lost world through the remnants left behind in permafrost, tar pits, and caves. In recent years, paleontologists have recovered astonishingly well-preserved specimens of woolly mammoths, rhinos, and other Ice Age animals, complete with skin, hair, and soft tissues. Some of the most spectacular finds have come from the frozen wastes of Siberia, where gold miners often stumble upon the remains of long-extinct creatures. In 2007, a Yakutian herder named Yuri Kudi was searching for mammoth tusks along the banks of a river when he spotted a strange block of ice. As he chipped away at it, he realized he had found the frozen carcass of a baby woolly rhino, complete with its horn and hazel-colored fur. The 18-month-old calf, which was named Sasha, had died some 34,000 years ago and was hailed as one of the most complete Ice Age specimens ever found. But perhaps no creature has captured the imagination quite like the woolly mammoth, which survived on remote islands until just 4,000 years ago. In the 21st century, the dream of bringing this iconic beast back to life through cloning or gene editing has gone from science fiction to real possibility. While the ethics and logistics of de-extinction are still hotly debated, there's no denying the allure of resurrecting a vanished world. For now, though, the closest we can come is to marvel at the frozen remains of these long-lost creatures and ponder our own place in the great unfolding story of life on Earth. Looking back over the vast expanse of the Pleistocene, we can see how the dance of climate change and evolution shaped the world we inherited. From the African savanna to the Siberian steppe, each chapter in this epic saga left an indelible mark on the planet and its inhabitants. As we face the challenges of a rapidly warming world, it's more important than ever to learn from the lessons of the past. By understanding how our ancestors adapted and persevered through the ice ages, we can find the wisdom and resilience to chart a sustainable course for the future. The story of the Pleistocene may be written in stone and ice, but its echoes still resound in the very fiber of our being. We are the children of the ice ages, the last survivors of a world that vanished in the blink of a geological eye. And as we gaze back across the eons, we are reminded of the fleeting nature of our own existence and the awesome responsibility we bear as stewards of this precious planet. In the end, the legacy of the Pleistocene is not just a tale of extinction and survival, but a testament to the enduring power of life itself. Imagine, if you will, a vast and unforgiving landscape where towering glaciers carve through rock and permafrost with unrelenting force. This was the world of the Pleistocene epoch, a time when much of the Earth lay frozen beneath mile-thick sheets of ice. For millions of years, strange and wondrous creatures thrived in these harsh conditions, adapting to the bitter cold and scarce resources. Among them were the woolly mammoths, enormous elephant-like beasts cloaked in shaggy fur. With their immense curved tusks and columnar legs, they roamed the grassy tundra in majestic herds, grazing on hardy vegetation. Alongside the mammoths trekked the woolly rhinoceros, an imposing herbivore with a thick, fleecy hide and two formidable horns jutting from its snout. Well suited to the frigid climate, these lumbering Ice Age titans coexisted with a menagerie of other megafauna. Prowling the edges of this domain were ferocious carnivores like the saber-toothed cat Smilodon and the hypercarnivorous dire wolf Enochiondyrus. With their elongated canines and powerful jaws, these predators were formidable hunters, capable of taking down prey many times their size. But the Pleistocene wasn't just an age of giants. Smaller mammals like the Arctic ground squirrel, steppe pika, and lemmings scurried beneath the feet of the behemoths, carving out their own niches in the unforgiving landscape. Herds of steppe bison, wild horses, and reindeer thundered across the grasslands, while species of deer, ox, and camel found footholds wherever they could. Yet even as these remarkable creatures flourished, the world around them was changing. Over millennia, the Earth's orbit and tilt slowly shifted, triggering a repeating cycle of glacial and interglacial periods. With each advance and retreat of the ice, ecosystems and weather patterns were drastically altered. As we'll soon discover, these climatic upheavals would have profound impacts on Pleistocene flora and fauna, setting the stage for some of the most significant events in the history of life on Earth. The arrival of a peculiar bipedal ape emerging from the savannas of Africa would add a new and unpredictable factor to the primordial equation. Indeed, the relationship between humans and the Ice Age megafauna they encountered would prove to be complex and fateful. Evidence suggests that our ancestors not only hunted these animals, but also revered them, immortalizing their likenesses in cave paintings and carvings. In the Chauvet Cave of southern France, for instance, breathtaking depictions of woolly rhinos, mammoths, and other Ice Age creatures adorn the walls, offering a tantalizing glimpse into the world of these early human artists some 30,000 years ago. The skill and sophistication of these renderings hint at a deep spiritual connection between humans and the megafauna they shared the landscape with. Yet even as our ancestors admired these magnificent beasts, they also played a role in their eventual demise. As the last Ice Age waned and the climate warmed, many Pleistocene giants found themselves ill-equipped to cope with the changing conditions. The retreat of the glaciers opened up new habitats and migration routes, allowing humans to expand their range like never before. Armed with sophisticated hunting tools and strategies, they began to exert increasing pressure on megafaunal populations already strained by shifting ecosystems. In the coming segments, we'll explore this fateful intersection of humans and Ice Age mammals in captivating detail. From the great mammoth bone dwellings of Eastern Europe to the mass grave sites where thousands of butchered carcasses lay buried, the archaeological record paints a vivid and often surprising picture of life and death in the Pleistocene. We'll also delve into the cutting-edge science that is helping us to better understand these long-extinct creatures and the world they inhabited. By studying the permafrost-preserved remains of mammoths, rhinos, and other Ice Age denizens, researchers are unlocking secrets about their diet, behavior, and genetic makeup. Some scientists are even pursuing the tantalizing possibility of resurrecting certain species through the burgeoning field of de-extinction. Using preserved DNA and advanced gene editing techniques, they hope to engineer elephants with mammoth-like traits, adapted to the warming Arctic of today. As we contemplate the awe-inspiring majesty of the Pleistocene megafauna and the ingenuity of the humans who lived alongside them, we're reminded of the fragility and interconnectedness of all life on Earth. In an age of rapid climate change and mass extinction, the story of the Ice Age giants and their ultimate fate holds vital lessons for us all. So join me as we embark on an unforgettable odyssey into the frozen past, where mammals of unimaginable size and ferocity once roamed. Together, we'll unravel the mysteries of their lives and untimely demise, and ponder what their legacy means for our own species in an uncertain future. As we set the stage for our prehistoric journey, let's rewind the clock back 2.6 million years to the start of the Pleistocene epoch, a time of dramatic shifts in climate that would radically reshape life on Earth. Vast ice sheets advanced and retreated in cycles, expanding to cover nearly a third of the planet's surface at their maximum extent. Sea levels rose and fell by hundreds of feet, alternately submerging and exposing great swaths of land. In this fluctuating world, a spectacular cast of now extinct megafauna evolved, giant animals exquisitely adapted to the extreme conditions. From the African savanna to the frozen tundra of Siberia, these titans of the Ice Age captivated the imaginations of our ancestors and left an indelible mark on human history. Perhaps no creature embodies the lost world of the Pleistocene more than the woolly mammoth. Standing up to 11 feet tall at the shoulder and weighing as much as 6 tons, these lumbering behemoths were covered in long, shaggy hair and equipped with enormous spiral tusks up to 14 feet long. For hundreds of thousands of years, mammoths roamed the steppe tundra of Eurasia and North America in vast herds, grazing on hardy grasses and shrubs. Superbly adapted to the cold, They sported small ears, short tails, and a 4-inch layer of insulating fat beneath their skin. Contrary to popular depictions, woolly mammoths were not the gentle giants of Ice Age lore. Males battled fiercely over mates, and females aggressively defended their young from predators like saber-toothed cats and dire wolves. Flash-frozen mammoth carcasses recovered from the permafrost of Siberia have yielded astonishing glimpses into their world. Amazingly, their stomach contents are often perfectly preserved, revealing their diet down to the last mouthful. But the mammoths were far from the only megafauna to roam the Pleistocene landscape. The woolly rhinoceros, covered in thick, reddish-brown hair, was a familiar sight across northern Eurasia. Standing nearly 7 feet tall and weighing up to 4 tons, these massively built herbivores sported 2 formidable horns, one up to 4 feet long and another smaller horn between the eyes. Like the mammoths, they were remarkably cold-tolerant, with stocky limbs, a humped back, and a coat of long guard hairs over a downy undercoat. Meanwhile, prowling the shadows of this Ice Age world, a remarkable array of predators flourished. The saber-toothed cat, armed with blade-like canine teeth up to 11 inches long, was an ambush hunter supremely adapted for killing large prey. Even more imposing was the dire wolf, a larger and more heavily built relative of modern grey wolves. Standing 30 inches tall at the shoulder and weighing 130 to 150 pounds, these pack hunters roamed from Alaska to Mexico, taking down bison, horses, and even young mammoths. But not all the megafauna of the Pleistocene were giants. The steppe bison, wild horses, and woolly antelope known as saiga also thrived in this harsh world, forming a complex web of predators and prey. It was against this backdrop that the first humans began to make their mark. Homo habilis, or handyman, appeared in East Africa around 2.3 million years ago, crafting crude stone tools and venturing out onto the savannah. From these humble beginnings, a new branch of the human family tree would arise, one that would ultimately conquer the world and drive many of the great beasts of the Pleistocene to extinction. But that's a story for another chapter. For now, we leave you with a vision of an Earth in the throes of an ice age, where giants walked the land and our ancestors were but humble newcomers on the scene. Join us next time as we continue our journey through prehistory and meet the remarkable human species that called this vanished world home. The story of life in the Ice Ages begins long before the first humans walked the Earth, in a time known as the Pleistocene epoch. Starting around 2.6 million years ago, this geological period saw dramatic swings between cold, glacial phases and warmer interglacial periods. At the peak of the last ice age, some 20,000 years ago, great ice sheets up to 3 kilometers thick blanketed much of North America, Europe, and Asia. With so much ocean water locked up as ice, sea levels plummeted, exposing vast tracts of land. It was against this backdrop of climatic upheaval that a spectacular cast of now extinct Pleistocene megafauna flourished. From the African plains to the frigid Siberian tundra, herds of massive herbivores like mammoths, mastodons, woolly rhinos, and giant sloths roamed the landscape. Preying upon them were a fearsome assortment of carnivores, including saber-toothed cats, American lions, cave hyenas, and dire wolves. Perhaps the most iconic of all the Ice Age giants was the woolly mammoth. Standing up to 4 meters tall at the shoulder and weighing as much as 6 tons, these behemoths were covered in a thick coat of shaggy hair to insulate them from the bitter cold. Recent discoveries of spectacularly preserved mammoth specimens frozen in permafrost have provided remarkable insights into their diet, behavior, and genetics. In 2013, scientists unearthed a 39,000-year-old female woolly mammoth nicknamed Buttercup in Siberia's remote Yakutia region. The incredible preservation of her soft tissues enabled researchers to determine that Buttercup had borne at least 8 calves. An analysis of plant remains in her stomach contents revealed she ate mostly grasses, sedges, and wildflowers, a grazing lifestyle that would have required prodigious amounts of vegetation to sustain her bulk. But the mammoth was far from the only supersized herbivore to lumber across the Ice Age steppes of northern Eurasia. The woolly rhino was another imposing resident, sporting a thick, furry hide and two large horns. The Yuka bison, named for a specimen found in Siberia in 2011, possessed a massive hump and stood 2 meters high at the withers. The Irish elk, largest of all deer species, flaunted the most impressive headgear, antlers spanning up to 3.6 meters from tip to tip. Exactly why so many giant species thrived during the Pleistocene is still a matter of scientific debate and ongoing investigation. One leading hypothesis posits that the cold, arid conditions and lack of dense forests created an abundance of nutrient-rich grasses, herbs, and small shrubs that could support large grazers. Their immense size may have provided an advantage in deterring predators and conserving heat. Ultimately, a perfect storm of changing climate, habitat loss, and human hunting is thought to have sealed the fate of the megafauna. As the glaciers retreated at the end of the last ice age, starting around 15,000 years ago, grasslands gave way to expanding forests in many areas, reducing the carrying capacity for large herbivores. Meanwhile, our own ancestors were becoming increasingly sophisticated hunters, developing better weapons and tactics to bring down big game. Recent evidence suggests the extinctions happened in a patchwork fashion in different ecosystems, rather than a single global wipeout. Woolly mammoths vanished from mainland Eurasia and North America around 10,000 years ago, but small populations persisted on remote islands like St. Paul and Wrangel until as recently as 4,000 and 1,650 years ago, respectively. The giant Irish elk held on in Western Europe until about 7,700 years ago. But it wasn't only colossal herbivores that disappeared as the Ice Age waned. Several remarkable species of early humans also went extinct, leaving us as the sole surviving hominins. Join us after a short break as we explore the rise and fall of the Neanderthals, Denisovans, and other lost members of the human family tree. Their story is intricately intertwined with the megafauna and the shifting climate of the Pleistocene world. Our story begins over 2 million years ago, in the heart of Africa, the birthplace of humanity. Here, against a backdrop of tall grasses, flat-topped acacia trees, and immense herds of antelope, primitive hominins were taking their first tentative steps towards becoming human. Known to scientists as Australopithecus, meaning southern ape, these early ancestors walked upright, but still possessed distinctly ape-like features: small brains, protruding brows, and powerful jaws, adapted for chewing tough vegetation. But the world was changing. Shifts in climate were transforming once lush forests into open savannas, a drier landscape where survival depended on cooperation, intelligence, and the ability to exploit a wider variety of food sources. Gradually, over hundreds of thousands of years, natural selection favored those hominins with larger brains, increased dexterity, and more sophisticated social skills. By around 2 million years ago, a new species had emerged, Homo habilis, or handyman. Armed with primitive stone tools and a brain 50% larger than Australopithecus, Homo habilis could butcher scavenged animal carcasses, unlocking a nourishing new source of protein that helped fuel further cognitive development. Thus began a transformative chapter in the human story. By 1.8 million years ago, a more advanced hominin, Homo erectus, was colonizing regions far beyond Africa, a migration made possible by longer legs, increased stamina, and mastery of fire. With fire, Homo erectus could cook food, stay warm, ward off predators, and venture into colder northern territories for the first time. Fast forward to around 600,000 years ago. Across Europe and Asia, Homo erectus was giving rise to new species, adapted to frigid climes very different from the African environments that had nurtured our earliest ancestors. These hardy, large-bodied hominins were the Neanderthals and Denisovans. Well suited for the brutal Ice Age conditions that repeatedly gripped the Northern Hemisphere, Neanderthals ranged from present-day Spain and Portugal to Uzbekistan. Barrel-chested, with angled cheekbones and prominent brows, Neanderthals were formidable hunters, wielding finely crafted stone spears to take down enormous woolly mammoths, rhinos, and other imposing Ice Age megafauna. The Denisovans, on the other hand, are a much more enigmatic people, known to us only from a handful of fossil fragments and objects unearthed in a single cave in southern Siberia. But thanks to cutting-edge advances in the study of ancient DNA, we now know these Denisovan remains belong to a genetically distinct lineage of hominins, a sister group that split from the Neanderthals some 400,000 years ago and roamed across Asia. Meanwhile, back in Africa, our own species, Homo sapiens, was evolving. By around 300,000 years ago, the first anatomically modern humans were beginning to assert their dominance on the continent. Taller, more slender and agile than the Neanderthals, with high foreheads and globular skulls, Homo sapiens developed language, art, and increasingly sophisticated hunting technologies, including bows and arrows. As the last ice age reached its peak around 20,000 years ago, bands of these African Homo sapiens began venturing into Eurasia, where they encountered and interbred with the Neanderthals and Denisovans. Today, genetic traces of those ancient couplings live on in the DNA of people of European and Asian descent, a legacy of this pivotal time when three kinds of humans coexisted on Earth. But the reign of the Neanderthals and Denisovans was drawing to a close. Whether outcompeted for resources by the technologically more advanced Homo sapiens, or edged out by climate change, these archaic human species disappeared from the fossil record by around 40,000 years ago, gone but never forgotten, their mystery and allure only deepened by the cutting-edge scientific methods we now use to study their remains. Join me in the next chapter as we step even further back in time and enter the lost world of the saber-toothed cats and dire wolves, Ice Age titans locked in a deadly game of predator and prey. Stay tuned, and thank you for listening. Our story begins around 2.6 million years ago, at the onset of the Pleistocene epoch, a time of dramatic global cooling and advancing ice sheets that would profoundly impact life on Earth. As lush forests gave way to open grasslands, an early human ancestor called Homo habilis was making crude stone tools in Africa. But they were not alone on the savannah. Prowling the plains were some of the most fearsome predators ever to evolve, the saber-toothed cats. With their iconic, elongated canine teeth, they were formidable hunters, ambushing prey like the giant short-faced kangaroo in Australia and the towering ground sloth in the Americas. But perhaps their most famous quarry was an icon of the Ice Age, the woolly mammoth. First appearing around 400,000 years ago, these majestic relatives of modern elephants roamed from Europe to Asia to North America. Adult bulls could stand up to 11 feet tall at the shoulder and weigh 6 tons or more. Shaggy coats up to 3 feet long and 4-inch layers of insulating fat helped them endure the bitter cold. With enormous tusks and tightly knit family units, mammoths were well equipped to face the many challenges of their harsh environment. But they were not invincible. Our early human ancestors saw them as both dangerous competitors and an essential resource. Archaeological evidence suggests Homo erectus was hunting mammoths in Europe as early as 400,000 years ago. Fast forward to around 300,000 years ago, and we find rare evidence of a stunning face-to-face encounter. In 2005, a gargantuan male mammoth skeleton was discovered near the village of Asolo in northern Italy. Dubbed the Mammothus meridionalis of Scolo Sandri, This colossal specimen stretched 11.5 feet tall, and radiocarbon dating placed it at over 300,000 years old. Most intriguingly, a large flint flake was found embedded between two of its ribs, clear evidence of a human hunting attempt. This remarkable find offers a poignant snapshot of the perilous interactions between early humans and megafauna. Did a small band of Homo heidelbergensis, wielding fire-hardened wooden spears, manage to break off a single flint point in the thick hide of a charging bull mammoth before retreating? We may never know the full story, but finds like this tantalizingly bring these long-vanished worlds to life. As the climate continued to cool and the ice advanced, mammoths were not the only giants to lumber across the increasingly frigid landscape of Pleistocene Eurasia. Coexisting and sometimes competing with them was another quintessential creature of the Ice Age, the woolly rhinoceros. Stocky, shaggy, and built like a tank, Coelodonta antiquitatis first appeared around 350,000 years ago and ranged from Scotland to South Korea. Standing up to 6.5 feet tall and 11 feet long, males could weigh an impressive 4,400 pounds. Like mammoths, they sported thick fur coats and layers of fat to insulate them from the biting winds. A large hump on their shoulders likely stored fat reserves, while their immense horns, rivaled only by the extinct giant unicorn rhino, may have been used for jousting matches between rival bulls. But even these imposing mega herbivores were not invulnerable to predation. In 2011, a cave in the Altai Mountains of southern Siberia yielded the exquisitely preserved remains of a female woolly rhino dating back around 34,000 years. Fascinatingly, the tip of what appears to be a spear point carved from mammoth ivory was found embedded in her ribs. Did a small band of intrepid Homo sapiens hunters manage to bring down this lumbering beast? Finds like this remind us of the courage and ingenuity of our prehistoric ancestors. Indeed, as the great ice sheets reached their maximum extent between 26,500 to 19,000 years ago, our species was spreading across the globe, and we were not alone. Concentrated in pockets of Eurasia were at least two other kinds of humans, whose existence was only confirmed in recent decades through the wonders of ancient DNA analysis. The more well-known were the barrel-chested, big-browed Neanderthals. First appearing around 400,000 years ago, they ranged across Europe and the Middle East, expertly hunting mammoths and other big game. They mastered fire, made complex tools and weapons, buried their dead, and even created symbolic art and ornaments. In many ways, they were not so different from us. Farther to the east, in the remote reaches of Siberia and Asia, lived the more enigmatic Denisovans. While only a handful of their scattered fossils have been found, their genetic legacy lives on in many modern populations, especially in Melanesia. Like Neanderthals, they interbred with our direct ancestors, and we now know that virtually all people alive today carry small amounts of DNA from these bygone relatives. But despite their adaptations and innovation, none of these humans were guaranteed survival in the face of relentless climate change and resource strain. And the very megafauna they depended on were facing their own fight for existence. In North America, distinctive creatures were evolving in isolation since the continent separated from Eurasia. With its bitterly cold interior, an ice-free corridor stretching from Alaska to the Great Plains became a vital passageway and breeding ground for migrating herds and the predators that stalked them. Here, the steppe mammoth shared the landscape with the mastodons, massive relatives of mammoths and elephants that sported straighter tusks and a preference for woodlands. And thundering beside them were the daunting American Ice Age horses, towering 1 to 2 feet taller than any modern equine. But perhaps most famous and feared of all were the giant bears. The South American spectacled bear grew up to 8 feet tall. The North American short-faced bear rivaled it in height, while weighing up to a staggering 1,500 pounds. making it one of the largest terrestrial mammalian carnivores of all time. With its long limbs and dagger-like claws, it was built for speed and power. The very last wave of megafauna to walk the Earth arose as the Ice Age began winding down between 14,000 to 11,000 years ago. On lush Wrangel Island in the Arctic Ocean, the last mammoths clung to survival until around 4,000 years ago, a staggering 6,000 years after their mainland cousins vanished. In Eurasia, the Irish elk, with its 12-foot wide antlers, made its final stand. And in the Americas, the armored glyptodon, a spectacular relative of armadillos the size of a Volkswagen Beetle, lumbered across the pampas. But despite their last gasps of adaptation and expansion, one by one these magnificent beasts disappeared. Whether due to overhunting, climactic upheaval, habitat loss, disease, or a combination of pressures, they vanished from the Earth forever as the Pleistocene gave way to the modern era. Only through stunning fossil and archaeological finds are scientists now beginning to reconstruct their lost worlds in vivid detail. While the age of giants is gone, its legacy endures in the species that survived and in the very landscape around us. The saber-toothed cats and dire wolves may be long vanished, but the African and Asiatic lions, grey wolves and coyotes still haunt the plains and forests. The mammoth is no more, but its living cousins, the African and Asian elephants, still roam. The lesson is clear. The Earth has undergone dramatic cycles of change throughout its history, and life, in all its splendid diversity, has always found a way to adapt and persist against all odds. In an age of human-driven climate change, habitat destruction and mass extinction, the Ice Age giants remind us of nature's resilience, but also its fragility. What we choose to do with that knowledge may determine the fate of life on this planet for millennia to come. As we set the stage for our journey, let's first travel back some 2.5 million years to the birth of the Quaternary period, the most recent chapter of Earth's history, characterized by the advance and retreat of massive continental glaciers. During this time, fluctuating temperatures caused sea levels to rise and fall, reshaping coastlines and transforming vast tracts of land into sprawling grasslands and frigid tundra. Against this backdrop of dramatic environmental change, our earliest human ancestors were beginning to make their mark in Africa. Known as Australopithecines, these small-bodied hominins walked upright on two legs and possessed brains about the size of a chimpanzee's. They crafted primitive stone tools and subsisted mainly on plants, scavenged meat, and perhaps small prey. While the Australopithecines eventually went extinct, they gave rise to new species that would continue to evolve and radiate across the globe. Fast forward to around 300,000 years ago, and we meet the earliest members of our own species, Homo sapiens, in Africa. Physically and behaviorally modern, these hunter-gatherers developed sophisticated stone tools, created symbolic art, and began to migrate out of Africa in waves, reaching Europe and Asia by at least 40,000 years ago. As Homo sapiens explored new continents, they encountered other archaic humans already living there, like the Neanderthals in Eurasia and Denisovans in Asia. Once thought of as primitive brutes, we now know these extinct hominins were far more advanced and similar to us than previously believed. Neanderthals, for instance, buried their dead, cared for the sick and injured, and even created cave art and ornaments. They thrived in the cold climates of Ice Age Europe for hundreds of thousands of years, hunting mammoths, woolly rhinos, cave bears, and other megafauna. But around 40,000 years ago, Neanderthals began to decline, and by 30,000 years ago, they had vanished from the fossil record. The reasons for their disappearance remain a mystery, but may involve a combination of factors, including competition with modern humans, interbreeding, and climate change. The Denisovans are an even more enigmatic lineage of extinct hominins known only from a handful of bones and teeth discovered in a Siberian cave. DNA analysis suggests they once ranged across Asia and interbred with both Neanderthals and modern humans before going extinct. Remarkably, the genetic legacy of both Neanderthals and Denisovans lives on in many people today. Modern humans of European descent typically inherit about 2% of their DNA from Neanderthal ancestors, while some Melanesian and Australian Aboriginal populations carry up to 6% Denisovan DNA. As pockets of modern humans fanned out and established themselves in Europe and Asia by around 35,000 years ago, the world was in the grips of the last ice age. Massive glaciers up to 3 kilometers thick in some places covered Scandinavia, northern Europe, and swaths of Asia and North America. Mammoths, woolly rhinos, and other cold-adapted megafauna grazed the vast mammoth steppe, a biome of grasslands and sparse forests stretching from Spain to Siberia. These enormous herbivores supported fearsome predators like cave lions, dire wolves, and saber-toothed cats. But as the last ice age began to wane around 14,000 years ago, many of these incredible beasts started to disappear. Rising temperatures, shifting habitats, and possibly human hunting pressure took a toll, and by 10,000 years ago, most of the iconic megafauna had vanished in an extinction event that marked the end of the Pleistocene epoch. While long extinct, many of these Ice Age animals are remarkably well preserved in the fossil record. Perhaps most famous are the frozen mummies of woolly mammoths and rhinos discovered in the permafrost of Siberia and Alaska. So well preserved are some of these specimens that their skin, hair, and internal organs are still intact after thousands of years. In 2013, scientists even extracted liquid blood from the carcass of a 15,000-year-old woolly mammoth found in the Siberian Arctic. The blood contained intact red blood cells and traces of hemoglobin, offering an unprecedented glimpse into the biology of these long-vanished giants. Other extraordinary finds include the Siberian unicorn, a species of giant rhino that persisted in western Siberia until at least 39,000 years ago, and the 57,000-year-old remains of a wolf pup discovered in Yukon, Canada, still locked in permafrost, with its skin and fur intact. Advances in ancient DNA analysis are also shedding new light on the lives of extinct Ice Age animals and humans alike. From the bones of Neanderthals and Denisovans, scientists have gleaned insights into their appearances, diets, and even cognitive abilities. DNA extracted from the remains of cave bears, woolly rhinos, and other long-lost species is helping to clarify how they were related to one another and modern animals. Some scientists are even exploring the possibility of using preserved DNA to resurrect extinct species, a process known as de-extinction. While still largely theoretical, such efforts underscore the enduring allure of these vanished creatures and our desire to connect with the prehistoric past. As we've seen, the story of the Ice Ages is one of dramatic transformation, incredible adaptations, and the emergence of our own species. It's a tale written in ancient bones and primeval DNA, and one that continues to unfold with each new discovery. By peering back through this window into the past, we can better understand the forces that have shaped life on Earth and our own place within it. In a time of rapid environmental change and mass extinctions, these lessons from the Ice Ages hold more relevance than ever before. So as we conclude our journey, I invite you to reflect on the marvels we've encountered, from towering mammoths to long-lost human cousins, and the secrets they continue to reveal. The ice may have long since melted, but the stories frozen within it endure, waiting to be unearthed by curious minds like yours. Thank you for joining me on this expedition into the depths of prehistory. Until next time, keep exploring, questioning, and marveling at the incredible story of life on Earth. The adventure continues. As the last great ice age gripped the planet, an explosion of large mammal species roamed the Earth. From Europe to the Americas, these megafauna included some of the most iconic creatures to ever exist. But while the woolly mammoth is perhaps the most famous, many other species thrived in this forbidding yet bountiful environment. In Siberia, paleontologists have uncovered spectacularly preserved remains of cave lions, woolly rhinos, and the extinct steppe bison. With their thick fur coats and compact bodies, these animals were well adapted to the frigid climate. Herds of musk oxen, reindeer, and horses traversed the vast grasslands, hunted by saber-toothed cats and the massive short-faced bear. But the king of this lost kingdom was undoubtedly the woolly mammoth. Standing up to 11 feet tall at the shoulder and weighing as much as 6 tons, these towering relatives of modern elephants ranged from Spain to North America. Insulated by dense, shaggy fur up to 3 feet long and 4 inches thick, mammoths could endure temperatures as low as -50 degrees Celsius. Their immense curved tusks, which could grow up to 15 feet long, were both formidable weapons and useful tools for foraging, digging, and moving obstacles. Mammoths were herbivores, subsisting mainly on grass, herbs, mosses, and tree bark. They lived in close-knit matriarchal family groups led by the eldest females, and could communicate over vast distances using low-frequency vocalizations that carried for miles. But mammoths and their Ice Age companions did not live in isolation. Homo sapiens first arrived in Eurasia from Africa around 40,000 years ago, joining the already established Neanderthals and Denisovans. These early humans were skilled hunters, and there is compelling evidence that they preyed upon mammoths, rhinos, and other megafauna. In 2020, a study revealed that Neanderthals living in what is now Poland crafted intricate spears specifically for hunting woolly mammoths. Archaeological digs across Siberia have uncovered numerous mammoth bone dwellings, demonstrating how crucial these animals were to human survival in the harsh tundra. Not only did they provide meat, fat, and warm fur, but their bones, tusks, and dung were used for building shelters, making tools, and even burning for fuel. As the climate began to warm and the Ice Age drew to a close around 10,000 years ago, the world's megafauna faced a perfect storm of habitat loss and human predation. The woolly mammoth hung on in dwindling, isolated populations on remote Arctic islands until as recently as 4,000 years ago, around the time the Egyptian pyramids were being built. But eventually, inevitably, the last of these magnificent beasts vanished into legend. And while it may be tempting to mourn their loss, new research offers glimmers of hope for the future. Scientists in Japan and Russia are working to resurrect the woolly mammoth through cutting-edge cloning and gene editing techniques. By splicing preserved mammoth DNA into the genome of modern elephants, they hope to birth a hybrid calf within the next 5 to 6 years. It's an audacious, controversial plan fraught with ethical questions. But if successful, it could not only restore a long-lost species, but potentially help combat climate change. You see, mammoths were a keystone species that helped maintain the grasslands. Their grazing, trampling, and nutrient-rich dung kept the soil fertile and the forests at bay. Some experts believe reintroducing mammoths to the Arctic tundra could help prevent the thawing of permafrost, which releases heat-trapping methane gas. In effect, resurrected woolly mammoths may hold a key to stabilizing our rapidly warming world. Only time will tell if this bold vision becomes reality. Our story begins during the Pleistocene epoch, a time of dramatic shifts in global climate that saw repeated advances and retreats of massive continental ice sheets. Around 2.6 million years ago, a period known as the Ice Age commenced, characterized by the expansion of glaciers and ice caps across much of the northern hemisphere. As temperatures dropped and ice encroached, sea levels fell, exposing vast tracts of land that had previously been submerged. Across Africa, Europe, and Asia, the changing landscape gave rise to a spectacular array of large mammals uniquely adapted to the harsh conditions. These incredible creatures would capture the human imagination for millennia to come. Perhaps the most iconic of the Ice Age giants was the woolly mammoth. Standing up to 11 feet tall at the shoulder and weighing as much as 6 tons, these imposing relatives of modern elephants were covered in long, shaggy hair that protected them from the bitter cold. With their immense curved tusks, woolly mammoths roamed in great herds across the steppe tundra of Eurasia and North America, grazing on hardy grasses and shrubs. Alongside the mammoths strode the woolly rhino, an extinct species of rhinoceros that sported a thick, furry coat and 2 impressive horns. Well suited for the frigid Ice Age environment, these herbivores could reach 6 feet tall and 15 feet long. Their fossils have been unearthed across Europe and Asia, hinting at their wide range during the Pleistocene. But the Pleistocene wasn't just a time of giant plant eaters. Fearsome predators also stalked the land, none more terrifying than the saber-toothed cats. The most famous of these was Smilodon, a powerfully built carnivore with 7-inch-long upper canines. These lethal hunters likely used their elongated teeth to deliver deep stabbing bites to the throats of prey, subduing mammoths, bison, and other large herbivores. The saber-tooths shared their domain with another formidable Ice Age carnivore, the dire wolf. Larger and heavier than today's grey wolves, dire wolves roamed across the Americas in fearsome packs, using their crushing jaws and teamwork to take down horses, camels, and bison. Thousands of dire wolf skeletons have been recovered from the La Brea tar pits in Los Angeles, suggesting these hunters thrived in large numbers during the Pleistocene. But the Ice Age wasn't just a story of extinction. It was also a time of remarkable resilience and adaptation. As glacial conditions ebbed and flowed, some creatures managed to evolve and persist. The muskox, for instance, survived the Pleistocene extinction and lives on today in the Arctic tundra, thanks to its dense, woolly coat and ability to subsist on meager vegetation. Even more remarkable was the survival of our own species, Homo sapiens. First appearing in Africa around 300,000 years ago, these early modern humans would eventually spread to every corner of the globe, outlasting the Neanderthals, Denisovans, and other archaic human lineages. Armed with advanced cognition, language, and technology, our ancestors would prove uniquely adaptable to the challenges of the Ice Age world. As we'll see, the story of the Pleistocene is one of incredible climatic upheaval, extinction, and survival against the odds. It's a chapter in Earth's history that saw the rise and fall of some of the most spectacular creatures to ever walk the planet, and set the stage for the emergence of our own species as the dominant life form. Join me as we continue our journey into this vanished world and uncover the secrets buried in ice. Imagine a world very different from our own, a world in the grip of an ice age. Massive glaciers blanket the northern continents. Sea levels are hundreds of feet lower. Vast grasslands and frigid tundra stretch across Eurasia and the Americas, inhabited by giants. This was the Pleistocene epoch, spanning from 2.6 million to around 11,700 years ago, also known as the Ice Age, though it actually encompassed a series of glacial and interglacial periods. The Pleistocene was a time of dramatic transformation for our planet and the life upon it. It was during this epoch that many iconic Ice Age megafauna first appeared and later vanished. Animals like the woolly mammoth, woolly rhino, Irish elk, cave bear, and saber-toothed cat. At the same time, the earliest members of our human family were embarking on an evolutionary journey that would ultimately carry them across the globe. Our story begins in Africa around 300,000 years ago, with the emergence of Homo sapiens, anatomically modern humans. For tens of thousands of years, These early humans shared the African landscape with other human species like Homo naledi and Homo heidelbergensis. But as the climate shifted and the African continent grew increasingly arid, Homo sapiens developed key adaptations that would allow them to survive and thrive. They became taller and more slender, with larger brains and the capacity for complex language. Crucially, they mastered the use of fire and began fashioning more sophisticated stone tools. Around 70,000 years ago, groups of these modern humans started venturing out of Africa, following the coastlines of Arabia, India, and Southeast Asia. By 50,000 years ago, they had reached Australia, entering a whole new world of challenges and possibilities. Meanwhile, their distant cousins, the Neanderthals, had already adapted to the harsh climates of Ice Age Eurasia. For hundreds of thousands of years, the Neanderthals carved out an existence as skilled hunters in a world of towering glaciers and thundering herds of game. But the Neanderthals were not the only human presence in Pleistocene Eurasia. Another group, known from fragmentary remains and ancient DNA, also walked the frozen landscapes. They were the Denisovans, whose evolutionary story is still largely a mystery. As bands of Homo sapiens pushed deeper into the Eurasian heartland, they encountered the Neanderthals and Denisovans. The results of those prehistoric meetings can be seen in the genomes of people alive today, which contain traces of Neanderthal and Denisovan DNA. The spread of modern humans into Ice Age Eurasia coincided with, and likely contributed to, the extinction of the Neanderthals and Denisovans. By around 40,000 years ago, Homo sapiens were the last humans left standing. But they were not alone. From the permafrost of Siberia to the caves of Europe and the Americas, astonishing Pleistocene creatures roamed. Mammoths and mastodons, woolly rhinos, Irish elk, dire wolves, American lions, and saber-toothed cats, giant ground sloths, glyptodonts, and short-faced bears. These Ice Age animals had adapted in remarkable ways to some of the harshest conditions the Earth has ever known. But as formidable as these Pleistocene megafauna were, they proved vulnerable to the impacts of a changing climate, human hunting, and other pressures. In the centuries and millennia to come, they would vanish one by one, leaving only their bones and our awestruck imaginings of them behind. The first to disappear were the Neanderthals and Denisovans, our closest evolutionary kin. The last known Neanderthal remains date to around 40,000 years ago in Europe, although they may have persisted longer in isolated pockets. The enigmatic Denisovans faded away around the same time, with the most recent fossil evidence coming from the Tibetan Plateau around 50,000 years ago. Next to go were some of the most spectacular Ice Age beasts. The woolly rhino went extinct around 14,000 years ago, likely due to a combination of climate change and human predation. The cave bear, once widespread across Europe and Asia, vanished around 24,000 years ago, perhaps outcompeted by brown bears and humans for habitat. The Irish elk, the largest deer that ever lived, died out around 7,700 years ago. Its enormous antlers, spanning up to 12 feet, may have become a liability as the environment shifted and predators like wolves and humans closed in. But perhaps no Pleistocene creature looms larger in our collective imagination than the woolly mammoth. These majestic relatives of modern elephants ranged from Spain to North America and from the Arctic to the Chinese tropics. Herds of mammoths thundered across the Pleistocene steppes of Siberia and Alaska, where their remains are still emerging from the thawing permafrost today. The reasons for the woolly mammoth's extinction are complex and still debated. What we do know is that by around 4,000 years ago, the last known mammoth population, a dwarf form living on Wrangel Island off the coast of Siberia, had disappeared. The age of the mammoths was over. Other iconic Ice Age species, like the saber-toothed cat and dire wolf, also blinked out during the late Pleistocene and early Holocene. The pattern repeated on every continent humans reached, from Eurasia to Australia to the Americas. As the climate warmed, the ice retreated, and human populations grew, the megafauna that had adapted to the Pleistocene world found themselves in a losing battle for survival. Today, the Pleistocene epoch and its cast of characters may seem impossibly distant, a world long lost to the mists of deep time. But in reality, that world is still very much with us. Its ghosts linger in the fossils we unearth, the tales we tell, and in the very fiber of our being. Every living human carries within them the genetic legacy of our Pleistocene ancestors and their Neanderthal and Denisovan cousins. Our physiology, our minds, our cultures, all were shaped by the challenges and triumphs of those first modern humans who walked the earth during the Ice Age. In a sense, we are the ultimate inheritors of the Pleistocene, the last remnants of a vanished world. It is up to us to remember and honor the stories of the extinct creatures and lost relatives who came before us, and whose struggles paved the way for our improbable success. By studying the Pleistocene, we also gain crucial insights into the workings of our planet's climate system, the dynamics of mass extinctions, and the resilience of life in the face of great change. As we grapple with the challenges of our own time, from global warming to biodiversity loss, the lessons of the Pleistocene may well be key to charting a sustainable path forward. So as we conclude our journey into the prehistoric past, let us reflect on the enduring connections that bind us to the Pleistocene and all the epochs that came before. The story of the Ice Age is, in the end, our story. It is a reminder of our place in nature, our kinship with all living things, and the awesome power of time to shape the world we inherit. Thank you for joining me on this voyage of discovery through the Pleistocene epoch. I hope you've come away with a deeper appreciation for the marvels and mysteries of our prehistoric past, and a renewed sense of wonder at the great saga of life on Earth. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and never stop learning. The story of our world is still unfolding, and we all have a part to play in shaping the chapters to come. Thank you, and goodbye. As we begin our journey, let us first set the stage by traveling back some 2.6 million years to the start of the Pleistocene epoch, a time of dramatic climatic upheaval on Earth. Vast ice sheets advanced and retreated in cycles, reshaping the landscape and profoundly impacting the evolution of life. In Africa, against the backdrop of these environmental changes, a remarkable transition was unfolding in the human family tree. Early hominins like Australopithecus, with their small brains and ape-like features, were giving way to the first members of our own genus, Homo habilis, the handyman. These pioneering toolmakers would soon be followed by Homo erectus, who mastered the use of fire and spread across Africa, Europe, and Asia. As we leap forward in time to around 700,000 years ago, the stage is set for the arrival of a new species in Europe, the Neanderthals. Stocky and powerfully built, with prominent brow ridges and large brains, the Neanderthals were well adapted to the harsh glacial conditions. Over hundreds of thousands of years, they developed sophisticated stone tools, mastered fire, and even began to express themselves through symbolic art. Meanwhile, in Asia, another sister species to modern humans was emerging, the enigmatic Denisovans. Though they left behind few fossil remains, the Denisovans would make an indelible mark on the human story through the fragments of their DNA that still persist in some populations today. But the Pleistocene was not just the age of early humans and our close relatives. It was also a time when giants roamed the earth. From the towering woolly mammoths that grazed the steppe to the massive cave bears that lumbered through Eurasia, the megafauna of the Ice Age were a sight to behold. One of the most iconic of these great beasts was the woolly mammoth. Standing up to 11 feet tall at the shoulder and weighing as much as 6 tons, these shaggy behemoths were superbly adapted to the bitter cold of the Ice Age. Insulated by dense fur and a 4-inch layer of subcutaneous fat, mammoths could endure temperatures as low as -50 degrees Fahrenheit. Mammoths were a keystone species in the steppe tundra ecosystem, shaping the landscape as they grazed on grasses, sedges, and shrubs. Their massive tusks, which could grow up to 15 feet long, were both formidable weapons and versatile tools used for foraging, digging, and defense. Though mammoths thrived for millions of years, by around 10,000 years ago, they began to disappear from most of their range. The last remaining pocket of woolly mammoths endured on Wrangel Island in the Arctic Ocean until around 4,000 years ago. Ultimately, a combination of changing climate, habitat loss, and human hunting likely drove these majestic creatures to extinction. But the mammoths were far from the only giants to vanish at the end of the last ice age. In Eurasia, other casualties included the woolly rhinoceros, the cave lion, and the Irish elk, a massive deer with antlers spanning up to 12 feet wide. In the Americas, the losses were even more staggering. Within a few thousand years of human arrival, more than 70 genera of large mammals had disappeared, from mastodons and saber-toothed cats to giant ground sloths and armored glyptodonts. Our story begins around 2.6 million years ago, at the onset of the Pleistocene epoch, a time of dramatic climate upheaval that would forever alter the course of life on Earth. Vast ice sheets advanced and retreated in cycles, sea levels rose and fell, and a succession of strange and mighty creatures evolved to inhabit the changing landscapes. Among the most iconic of these Pleistocene animals were the mammoths, majestic, hairy relatives of modern elephants that roamed the grasslands and tundra of Eurasia and North America. The first mammoth species emerged in Africa around 5 million years ago, but it was during the Pleistocene that they diversified and spread across the northern continents. The most famous member of the mammoth lineage was the woolly mammoth, Mammuthus primigenius, which first appeared some 400,000 years ago. Woolly mammoths were superbly adapted to the frigid Ice Age environment, with small ears, a short tail, and a dense, shaggy coat up to a meter long. Beneath this insulating fur, they had a 10-centimeter layer of fat for added protection against the cold. These epic herbivores stood up to 4 meters tall at the shoulder and tipped the scales at around 6 tons, roughly the same size as modern African elephants. However, their teeth were highly specialized for feeding on the tough grasses and sedges that dominated the Pleistocene steppe. With their long, curved tusks, which could grow over 4 meters long, mammoths dug through snow to reach buried forage and stripped bark from trees. For hundreds of thousands of years, woolly mammoths thrived across vast swaths of the northern hemisphere, from Spain to Siberia. Their fossilized remains have been found from the British Isles to eastern Canada. But they weren't the only giants to roam the Pleistocene world. Woolly mammoths shared their habitat with woolly rhinos, which were covered in thick, reddish-brown hair. These tank-like behemoths, weighing in at up to 3 tons, had a formidable set of horns and a hump on their backs that may have stored fat reserves. Like the mammoths, woolly rhinos were grazers, using their lips and teeth to pluck and tear grasses and shrubs. The windswept, frigid steppe was home to an array of other remarkable megafauna. There were bison and musk oxen, as well as giant deer with 3-meter-wide antlers called Irish elk, although they lived far beyond Ireland. And let's not forget the predators that kept these great herds in check. Prowling the edges of the ice was the cave lion, a powerful cat with a reddish coat that was 25% larger than modern African lions. These ambush predators likely used caves and crevices as dens to raise their young, as suggested by the discovery of their bones in such places. Also on the hunt was the cave hyena, a stocky relative of today's spotted hyena that acted as both predator and scavenger. Like its modern counterpart, The cave hyena probably lived in social matriarchal clans. Analysis of its fossilized feces shows it had a penchant for gnawing mammoth bones. But perhaps the most fearsome carnivore of the Pleistocene was the saber-toothed cat, Smilodon. Though commonly called a tiger, Smilodon was more closely related to today's lions. It had a short tail, a powerful build, and deadly 7-inch long canine teeth, which it likely used to slash the throats of its prey in a precisely aimed pounce. From the tip of California's La Brea tar pits to the grasslands of South America, Smilodon fossils show it was once one of the most successful big cats on Earth. Overlapping the ranges of all these magnificent beasts were our own early ancestors, the archaic humans. By around 2 million years ago, the genus Homo had emerged and spread beyond Africa with simple stone tools. By 1 million years ago, early humans were inhabiting seasonal campsites and wielding fire in Europe and Asia. Later, between about 800,000 and 130,000 years ago, the Neanderthals arose and thrived across Eurasia. Around the same time, another group, the Denisovans, split from the Neanderthals and spread into East Asia. These pioneering hominins were expert hunters and survivors who weathered multiple ice ages. They made intricate stone tools, crafted simple clothing and jewelry, and buried their dead with symbolism. Both the Neanderthals and Denisovans interbred with the ancestors of modern humans, and their DNA still flows in our veins today. But then, beginning some 40,000 years ago, the world began to change once again. The great Pleistocene beasts slowly dwindled and blinked out, like candles in the gathering dark. The woolly mammoths, rhinos, cave lions, and saber-toothed cats all vanished, along with the Neanderthals and Denisovans. The exact causes are still debated, but a perfect storm of human overhunting, natural climate change, and perhaps disease may have sealed their fates. Only remnant populations persisted, hidden away in the remotest corners. Wrangel Island, off the coast of Siberia, harbored the world's last woolly mammoths until around 4,000 years ago. And in the case of the Denisovans, tantalizing traces of their genes in modern Southeast Asians hint they may have clung on until as recently as 15,000 years ago. Today, the majestic megafauna of the Pleistocene are long gone, but they are far from forgotten. Each year, new fossil finds and cutting-edge research techniques peel back layers of their mysteries, offering intimate glimpses of their lost world. From frozen mammoth calves uncovered in the Siberian permafrost to Neanderthal DNA extracted from cave sediments, these discoveries remind us that we, too, are part of an unbroken chain of life stretching back to the Ice Age and beyond. So the next time you gaze upon an elephant or rhinoceros at the zoo, or perhaps lock eyes with your own reflection, consider the deep and tenacious roots of your family tree. And know that the story of life on Earth is one of ceaseless change, with each species, extinct or extant, playing its part in an intricate web of resilience, adaptation, and survival. That is the enduring legacy of the Pleistocene megafauna and the early humans who shared their world. It is a testament to the indomitable spirit of nature itself. As we step out of the mists of deep time and into the late Pleistocene epoch, around 50,000 years ago, we find ourselves in a world both alien and strangely familiar. Vast glaciers have swallowed up much of the planet's water, lowering sea levels and exposing land bridges between continents. Across the mega-continent of Afro-Eurasia, from Europe to the Far East, an endless grassland sea stretches to the horizon, the Mammoth Steppe. This is the land of the woolly giants. Picture it now, huge herds of woolly mammoths, larger than modern African elephants, lumber across the tundra, grazing on hardy grasses and shrubs. Their immense curving tusks glint in the sun as they use them to sweep aside snow and dig for roots. Shaggy coats of long brown outer hairs protect them from the bitter cold, with dense underlayers of shorter, woollier fur for added insulation. Smaller, but no less impressive, woolly rhinos join them, their thick horns and formidable bulk making them a daunting sight. These cold-adapted cousins of today's elephants and rhinos thrived across the northern hemisphere for hundreds of thousands of years. But they were not alone in this often harsh Ice Age environment. Stalking them were some of the most fearsome predators ever to walk the earth: saber-toothed cats, cave hyenas, and lions up to 25% larger than their modern relatives. With their long canine teeth and powerful builds, they were well equipped to take down even the mightiest prey. Yet perhaps the most cunning and deadly hunter of all was beginning to make its presence felt. Small bands of early humans, including our Neanderthal cousins in Eurasia, were venturing out into this challenging landscape. Armed with simple but effective stone tools and weapons, they were learning to survive and even thrive in the Ice Age world. The fate of the woolly mammoths, rhinos, and other Ice Age megafauna would become inextricably linked with our own ancestors. As the climate shifted and human populations grew, these majestic creatures faced increasing pressure. Cave paintings and carvings dating back over 30,000 years hint at the intimate relationship between early humans and the woolly giants. In some cases, they were revered, even worshipped. In others, they became prey, hunted for their meat, hides, and bones. Fast forward to the end of the last Ice Age, around 10,000 years ago. The world is warming, the glaciers are receding, and the mammoth steppe is giving way to dense forests. The woolly mammoths, rhinos, and many of their contemporaries are in decline, their populations fragmented and vulnerable. In a few isolated pockets, the very last of their kind linger on. On remote Wrangel Island in the Arctic Ocean, a dwarf subspecies of woolly mammoth will hold out until around 4,000 years ago. But for the vast majority, the age of the woolly giants is over. As our own species flourished and spread, transforming the very face of the planet, these titans of the Ice Age faded into memory and myth. Today, their frozen remains are all that endure, snapshots of a lost world preserved in permafrost for thousands of years. From the thawing carcasses of mammoths and rhinos to the bones of Neanderthals and other early humans, these remnants offer us an unparalleled window into the past. Through their study, we can begin to unravel the mysteries of the Ice Age world and our own origins. We can marvel at the incredible adaptations that allowed these creatures to thrive in such extreme conditions, and ponder the complex web of factors that led to their ultimate demise. In the end, the story of the woolly mammoths and their Ice Age contemporaries is one of resilience, tragedy, and enduring fascination. As we grapple with our own uncertain future in an era of rapid climate change, their tale takes on new meaning and urgency. By understanding the forces that shape their rise and fall, we may yet find the wisdom to chart a more sustainable path forward. Thank you for joining me on this immersive journey into the world of extinct Ice Age creatures and early human prehistory. I hope you found it as captivating and thought-provoking as I have. If you enjoyed this exploration of our deep past, please consider subscribing to our channel for more science and history documentaries that aim to enlighten and inspire. Until next time, stay curious.